Welcome to Lesson 4, Year 7 of Desert Island School. Your bags are packed and you're on board having a lovely time. It's Miss Bart here again, and I'm very pleased to be teaching you today's lesson called Shipwreck. Here's what you'll need for today's lesson, and it's exactly the same as before. Your booklet, also known as your workbook, a writing pen. You'll need your knowledge organiser, which is to be found on pages 2 and 3 of your workbook, and a dictionary and thesaurus will really be of help if you have them at home. Remember, you can also find these online. We'd also like you to turn off the notifications on your smartphone. Or if you're using a laptop or desktop, why not turn off your phone and put it in another room for now, so that you can really focus on this lesson. Press pause if you haven't got any of your equipment ready, and unpause when you've got yourselves organised. It's time for the do now today, which is found in activity 1 of your workbook. Look at the image. Annotate with as many adjectives as possible to describe what type of weather it is. There's a challenge again, so if you do that and have time and would like to take on the challenge, write a sentence to describe this picture using those adjectives that you've listed. Press pause and unpause when you're ready to move on. Today's learning objectives are to use emotive language and to use figurative language. Here's the new knowledge part of the lesson, and we're going to begin with emotive language. Empathy with a character is understanding what they are going through. It helps the reader understand their situation and feelings better. In order to feel the experience for themselves, readers have to identify with the character and be put into their shoes. You need to use powerful adjectives so that the reader connects with the character's feelings. This is different from sympathy. Imagine it like this. Sympathy is if you see that somebody hasn't got any shoes and you say to them, "Here, have this pair of shoes because I see that you don't have any. I feel bad for you." That's sympathy. Empathy is when you know what it's like to not have any shoes, to walk without a pair of shoes on. And then you may give somebody a pair of shoes and say with them, if you're showing empathy, you would say to them, "Have this pair of shoes. I know what it feels like to be walking without a pair of shoes on." So sympathy, here's a pair of shoes. I feel bad for you that you're walking without shoes. Empathy, here's a pair of shoes because I know what it feels like to walk without shoes. Emotive language is word choices that are used to evoke emotion. You try to make the reader feel something. For example, rather than saying your character is sad, you could say instead, your character is distraught. This really emphasises the level of sadness your character is experiencing. Or you could describe a situation which makes the reader feel sad for that other person. So remember, emotive language isn't just language that describes emotions. It's language that's designed to make the reader feel emotions. So if you look at the two images above, the first one is about empathy. Knowing what it feels like to be that character. understanding what they're going through. The one on the right is related to emotive language, where you as a writer are presenting an emotion and helping the reader to feel that emotion. How do we use feelings and emotions in our writing? It's time now to work on activity 2 in your workbook. Whilst you and your classmates are enjoying your relaxing cruise, a powerful hurricane occurs. It has winds of high speeds and makes the waves tower over the cruise ship. You can find a precise definition of hurricane in your knowledge organiser if you've never come across that idea before. Here's your task. Think about how you would be feeling if you saw a hurricane coming towards you whilst on the cruise ship. Remember, you were relaxing and having fun and pleasure just before this incident occurs. Jot down some adjectives when the pause button comes up. Unpause when you've got a few written down. Adjectives, if you remember, are describing words. Here's some options. Maybe you'd be shocked, terrified, a stronger word for terrified, petrified. Petrified means that you've almost been turned to stone, you're frozen because of your fear. I'm sure there are plenty of other words that you could have picked, and this is where your thesaurus might come handy. When you're using your thesaurus, make sure that whichever word you select, you double check with the dictionary means exactly what you want it to mean. Don't just randomly pick words from thesauruses without checking them. Here's the next section of new knowledge, and this time we're focusing on figurative language. Put your pens down and listen really carefully. Figurative language is a way of using words to mean something beyond the literal. Remember, the literal is the dictionary definition of a word. Figurative language is an imaginative way of writing, and it also helps the reader create a mental image of what the writer is trying to describe. Here's some examples of common figurative language techniques that writers use. A metaphor is a phrase used to describe something as if it was something else. For example, he was a tower of strength to me. He is being described as if he were a tower. A simile describes something by comparing it to something else, using the words like or as. An example would be, she was as cool as a cucumber. In this example, she was just like a cucumber. Sounds odd. Cucumbers are cool. When you eat them, have a crunch, we usually keep them in the fridge, and we think of them as being a cool piece of food, cool to the touch. So she was also cool and calm. Personification gives human qualities to animals, non-living objects, or ideas. There's going to be an image coming up which we'll look at for personification. Here's a metaphor. You can see that the brain in this image is doing some weightlifting. And there we have the metaphor that the brain is a muscle man, a strong person. Here's an image that might help you to understand more about simile. In it, you can see that somebody is comparing one fruit, an apple, with another fruit, a pear. What would make them similar? Oh, they're both crunchy and they're both sweet. So you could maybe be comparing one to the other to say that they have similar qualities. Here's personification. Hopefully here you can see that a tyre, probably a car tyre, is being drawn as if it were a person. That would be an interesting way of personifying. A car tyre can go flat. Maybe you would use that to show that somebody is tired or sad. It's time now for activity 3, where you're going to have a go at writing your own figurative language. Have a go now at writing an example of a metaphor, a simile, and personification. Press pause, take your time, think hard, and press unpause when you're ready to move on. Now we're ready for the planning and the main activity, which is activity 4. We'd like to invite you to write a paragraph in which you describe what happened on the ship when the hurricane occurred. We'd like you to include figurative language, metaphor, simile, personification, and emotive language, perhaps language that's designed to help the reader feel the fear that you feel when you see that hurricane approaching. Don't forget that some of that emotive language can include enjoyment and pleasure and fun before the hurricane hits, and then the change after that to possibly more fear, more worry, more panic. Enjoy writing your descriptive paragraphs, Year 7. We as teachers are going to enjoy reading them, and we'll give you some feedback on them to tell you how you're going. See you next time.